So the fig tree speaks of religious Israel. But look at this. Assuredly I say to you, verse 34, this generation will by no means pass away. Now Jesus spoke this back in 32 AD. He died at about April 9. I mean, you can look at history to verify that. He died on April 9. That's a Wednesday, by the way. April 9, 32 AD. He rode on a donkey on April 6, Sunday, 789. Wednesday, he died. Okay, April 9. Now, he said, this generation shall by no means pass away. 32 AD, he said that. Until all of these things happen. Well, guess what? It's been 2,000 years. It seems like that generation died. Or perhaps we are misunderstanding something. Now, let's look first, very quickly, here comes the math part, at what is a generation? Well, Genesis 6:3 says, then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. Here it is. His days will be 120 years. That's one generation. 120 years. One generation. So the Bible very clearly says, a generation is 120 years. Now, he spoke in 32 AD. Okay. And, okay, do I press this? There we are. Okay. He spoke in 32 AD. And then Israel, Jerusalem, ceased to be at 70 AD. So between 32 AD and 70 AD, that's 38 years. That's not one generation. After that, there was no Israel. There were Jews, but no Israel. See? So the clock, as it were, stopped. It stopped. Until 1948. And then started again. Today we are, what year is this? That's right, 2010. So if we're going to look at 2010, from 1948, Israel now, in our lifetime, has been around for what? 62 years. You add 38 and 62, how much is that? 100 years. How many more before a generation passes? 20 years. So now 2010 plus 20 years is 2030. Could that be when Jesus comes? Could be. Could be. Now, before Jesus comes, there's that 7-year period called the time of Jacob's trouble. 7 years. Okay? So subtract 7 years from 2030, and that's 2023, and probably about the time when the Great Tribulation period will start. Which means, by the way, we get raptured anytime between now and 2023. See? Now, what that tells us, assuming, just for the sake of argument, okay, assuming that we get raptured just before Daniel's 70th week starts. By the way, Daniel's 70th week is another name for the time of Jacob's trouble, which is another name for the Great Tribulation period. Okay? That's 7 years. Now, let's assume that the church gets raptured sometime just before Daniel's 70th week. So that gives us, between now at 2010 up to 2023, how many years? 13 years. 13 years. Those of you that will be giving birth this year, you'll have a teenager. Just make it to their teen years. See? Assuming, and this is a big assumption, that all of this is correct. Could I be wrong? Of course. Of course I could be wrong. Could Jesus come maybe in another 1,000 years? Yes, that's possible. But highly unlikely. Is this meant to scare you? Of course not. If you get scared, the Bible says, don't let yourself be troubled by these things. What am I trying to say? Time is not as long as you think. It's not as long as you think. Now, even if I'm wrong, 13 years are going to pass. In 13 years, it will be 2023. In 20 years, it will be 2030. The only question now that we need to answer is, how are you going to live those years? You can live it serving God, or you can live it serving yourself. Whether Jesus comes or not in our lifetime, it really doesn't matter whether He comes in our lifetime or not. The question is, how are you going to use those years? Will you make a difference in somebody else's life and yours? Or will you just be here to build yourself up, to live for yourself, to live for myself, my pleasure, and build my kingdom, my empire, my business? See, I've come to realize in life there is nothing, and no one outside of Jesus Christ more important than your calling. Nothing or no one is more important than your calling. Because at the end, if you're saved, whether you fulfill your calling or not, you'll still make it to Jesus. You'll still make it to heaven. But the thing is, will He say, good and faithful servant? Will you have rewards based on the good works according to His will for us? Not just any good work. Because all the good works will either be made of gold, silver, and precious stones, or wood, hay, and stubble. And they will go through a fire, what they call the Bema Seat. And we'll be talking about the Bema Seat over the next 2 weeks in our training for reigning. And all our works will be burned in a fire. Fire speaks of judgment. Our works will be judged. And only the works according to God's will make it through the fire. And all the works that are not according to God's will get burned up. And I suspect, this is my suspicion, what do we need rewards for when we're in heaven? What for? Do we need money when we're there? I don't think so. So what's the purpose of the rewards? This is what I think. I think that the rewards that make it through the fire will become your capital, your capitalization funds, when we come back and we have the new heaven and the new earth. So some are going to have big capital. Some, they're going to have small capital. Okay? So hopefully your crown can fit on your head and not just crown the tansan. Okay? Hopefully that's not, the bottle cap. Okay? Tansan. Hopefully that's not all we have.